Hi, hello and welcome back to F1 Challenge VB. My name is Mephisto and our journey through the history of Formula 1 continues today with the 5th round of the 1955 season, the Dutch Grand Prix. It was held on the 19th of June, it had 16 entries with all of them taking part in the race, but there were 5 retirements. The race consisted of 100 laps completed in 2 hours, 54 minutes and 23 seconds. Juan Manuel Fangio started the race from pole, Moss was second, Kling third, Musso fourth and Hawthorne started the race from fifth. Fangio won the Dutch Grand Prix from Moss, who was just 0.3 of a second behind, making this a very tight victory. Musso finished in third, he was 57.1 seconds behind. Mieres crossed the line in fourth, he was 1 lap down, and Eugenio Castellotti finished the race in fifth, he was 3 laps down. Roberto Mieres managed to post the fastest lap of the race, a 1 minute 40.9 second lap. After missing from the calendar in the last season, the Dutch Grand Prix is back here amongst the sand dunes of Zandvoort, where a lap begins with a long run down into turn 1, a tight right hand hairpin. Use the banking to your advantage, but don't get too close to the edge. Next is turn 2, a left-right chicane. Almost immediately after you exit the chicane comes turn 3, a tight left-hand hairpin. Again, use the banking to your advantage, but don't get too close to the edge of the track. Next are turns 4, 5 and 6, 3 shallow and easy corners. Then comes turn 7, brake hard down to second or third gear, keep it steady as it is quite easy to lose the back here. Follows are another series of shallow corners that shouldn't be too much of a problem. But then we come into turn 12, a medium speed right-hander. Progressively apply power as the turn opens up and comes into turn 13, which is more of a kink than an actual corner. But that brings us around onto the main straight, and that is a lap around the Zandvoort circuit. And here we are in Zandvoort, ready to qualify for the Dutch Grand Prix, and we're starting from the pit because I wanted to show you that for some reason Ken McAlpine decided to park his car right in front of mine. Thankfully I was able to get out of the pit, so we can now start our qualifying, and now coming around to post our first flying lap, a 140.884, not a very good lap, especially not compared to Luigi Villoresi's pole time, but with this weather it's kind of difficult to find any speed. Later on I managed to improve a little bit, that's a 140.1, although it's still far away from Villoresi's pole time, a 126.7, so hopefully we can push a little bit harder, and I kind of do. However, that a Simca Gordini appeared in front of me out of nowhere, and that's kind of the end of our qualifying, although we do manage to improve our time, a 139.29, so yeah, kind of makes me wonder how much more I could have improved, but well, we shall never know because we crashed and our car couldn't be repaired for the rest of the session. And here are those were the previous Dutch Grand Prix winners. We were among them. And now let's take a look at the grid. We have Juan Manuel Fangio on pole with Sterling Moss in second, Eugenio Castellotti third, Maurice Intignon fourth, with Roberto Mieres rounding off the top 5. Next we have Piero Taruffi in sixth, Farina seventh, Jean Berra occupying the 8th spot on the grid, followed by Luigi Musso in 9th, 10th is Luigi Villoresi, Paul Frere is 11th, followed by Carl Kling in the Mercedes in 12th, 13th is Jose Froilan Gonzalez in the blue-yellow Ferrari, followed by Harry Schell in 14th, 15th is Johnny Claes, Umberto Maglioli 16th, Louis Chiron 17th, Jacques Paulet is 18th, Hermano da Silva Ramos is 19th, 20th is John Fitch, Eli Bayol 21st, 22nd is held by Mike Hawthorne, 23rd is Hans Hermann with Louis Rosier in 24th, 25th Robert Manzon, 26th Lance Macklin, 27th Roy Salvadori, 28th Ken McAlpine, 29th Horace Gold, 30th Peter Walker, Jack Brabham 31st, and Andy Higgs unfortunately starting from 32nd. It looked good in qualifying, but unfortunately it ended up being bad overall, so this is our worst starting position this season thus far, but we are off with a bit of delay on my part, but I wanted to give the AI a little bit of head start just to give myself enough room to react in case there's any problems, as we already see as we come into turn 1 here. The hairpin, the embankment here can really help you, although you should stay off that inside edge there because it's very tricky and could easily force you to lose your car. So be careful around this circuit whenever coming into a corner. So we are now up in 30th. We kind of lost a couple of positions. We lose another position to Peter Walker, who squeezes past us in his Sterling Moss Limited Maserati. We have Jack Brabham right behind us. Hopefully we can keep him there, but now we have a look at a replay of the start. A bit of smoke coming off the wheels of my van wall, but nothing serious. One thing to note, Mike Hawthorne decided to switch over to Ferrari from van wall, so I'm the, well, not me, but Andy is the sole van wall driver on the track at the moment, and I think that's going to be the same for the rest of the season. I don't think Hawthorne will return to van wall, although I could be wrong. But yeah, so we gained a couple of positions, but then I lost a few through these winding, twisting corners of the Zandvoort circuit. A very fun circuit, by the way. And here we see Harry Schell losing control of his Ferrari 555, kind of going off, and we see a couple of other 555s kind of stumbling and going topside down, but Schell is the only one who stays like that, so he has the first official retirement of the race. As we come to start lap 2 here, we move up into 27th, fortunately enough, and we see Umberto Maglioli losing control of his car once again, so we move up into 26th and chasing after Peter Walker at the moment, and we see a replay of Juan Manuel Fangio, who goes very wide, then gathers it up and goes wide again and crashes into a Simca Gordini, and they both lose wheels, so that's the end of their respective races. And we now see Eli Bayol in his Simca Gordini, the number 12. He loses control of the car, hits Jose Frolan Gonzalez's Ferrari, then Fangio comes around to collect him, and that's the end of the races. As we now start lap 3, we see Sterling Moss kind of trying some tricks with his Mercedes as we move up into 23rd, chasing after Lance Macklin at the moment, and we now see a replay of Eugenio Castellotti, who comes wide out of the chicane, loses control of the car, drives into the fence, and his race is over now. Next we have a look at Horace Gould, who drives his Maserati into that Mercedes and kind of loses control, and the AI pathfinding kind of messes up, and that's the end of Gould's race. As we now have a look at Hans Hermann, who goes very wide, hits the fence, loses his front wheel, he flips the car upside down, and that is the end of his Dutch Grand Prix. And we now move to lap 5. We are now 19th, chasing after Roberto Mieres, who is about 6 seconds up the road, although he's now losing. We are now catching up very quickly to Roy Salvadori, and we managed to pass him and move up into 18th. And this is Nino Farina in the number 2 Lancia, loses control of the car, and then one of the Simcas comes around. I think that's Paul Frere, collects the Lancia, and that's the end of the race. Nope, actually Paul Frere is in a different car, in a Ferrari. He comes around, loses control of the Ferrari, and that is the end of his race as well. As we now move up to lap 6, we are back down in 19th, chasing after Peter Walker with about 3 seconds of the road, and we now have a look at Mike Hawthorne, who goes wide and crashes into that wall there, losing his front left wheel, ending his run at the Grand Prix. As I kind of clipped the edge of the track there, lose control of my car. Thankfully I don't hit anything and I'm free to rejoin the race, although that was a bit scary, fun and scary all at the same time. Although we lost a lot of time, so we dropped to 20th, and this is now lap 7, still in 20th, although Jack Brabham seems to have lost his car because we were catching up to him. But we now take a look at a replay of Sterling Moss, who crashes into one of his own cars, a Sterling Moss Limited Maserati. And here we see Lance Macklin crashing into one of the red cars. Not entirely sure if it was a Ferrari or a Maserati, but those are two other cars out of the race. And as we now come onto lap 8, chasing after Umberto Maglioli, we are in 19th. Behind us is Carl Kling, and we now see a replay of Louis Rosier, who crashes into the number 10 Mercedes there, loses his front left wheel, flips his Maserati, and that is the end of his race. As we now come around to overtake Umberto Maglioli as we are about to end lap 9, and we now see a replay of Luigi Villoresi and his Lancia going wide, touching the outer edge of the track, loses control, crashes into the fence, and he is out of the Grand Prix. As we now take a look at Maurice Trintignant, who does the exact same thing as Villoresi, as we see Andy Higgs going by, and this is John Fitch in the Sterling Moss Limited Maserati. Loses control of his car, hits something, and he's now joining Juan Manuel Fangio's Mercedes there on the sandbanks. And now we are on lap 10, still chasing after Umberto Maglioli, as we now have another replay, this time of Jose Froilan Gonzalez's blue-yellow Ferrari. He loses control of the car coming out of the final corner, crashes into the fence, and that is the end of his race. As we now approach Roberto Mieres on lap 11, we are up in 12, that's 11th place there, and we now see a replay of Roy Salvadori in his dark green Maserati. He loses control of his car, ends up on the sandbanks of Zandvoort here. For some reason he doesn't want to turn left where the track is. He continues on the path he was on, ends up behind that wall, and that's the end of his race. As we now take a look at Piero Taruffi in his Ferrari 555, he loses control of the car, hits Fangio's stricken Mercedes, loses his front left, and that's the end of Taruffi's race as well. As we now come on to lap 13th, we are up in 11th, and we are about to be lapped by Johnny Claes there in his Equipe Nationale Belge, I think. And we now take a look at Roberto Mieres, who loses control of his car, hits that wall, and immediately as he starts going once again, his engine blows up, and that's the end of his race. Quite unfortunate and a bit funny, to be honest, but oh well. We are now on lap 14th, chasing after Jack Brabham, who is very far up ahead. He is about 24 seconds up the road now, so quite far away. As we now take a look at a replay of Carl Kling, he hits the wall there, goes wide, hits the wall, and that's the end of his race now. This is now lap 16th, we are up in 10th, chasing after Jean Berra, who is around 3 seconds up the road. And here is Johnny Claes in his yellow Ferrari. He loses control, crashes into that fence, loses his front right wheel, and he is also out of the Dutch Grand Prix. We now move up to lap 17th, as we see a replay of Umberto Maglioli losing control of his Ferrari, crashing into the fence there, losing his front left, and his Dutch Grand Prix is over. And that is Luigi Musso losing control of his car, and I think I saw him without a wheel. Here is a replay of Luigi Musso losing control of his car. He kind of gets side by side with another Maserati as Ken McAlpine comes around collecting Musa loose, and that is the end of Musa's run in this Grand Prix, as someone is coming around to lap me, not entirely sure on lap 23 here. And we now see a replay of Ken McAlpine, who was actually leading the race at this point. He crashed into Luigi Musa, and unfortunately that was the end of the race for McAlpine. I'm not sure who took the lead after this, but we now have a look at Jacques Paulin, who for some reason decides to pull to the side of the track and retire. No, he doesn't seem to have hit anything, but oh well. Lap 25 and Louis Chiron is out of the Grand Prix, and we also passed Peter Walker, and we are now actually looking at Peter Walker. He loses control of his Maserati, tries to get back onto the track, but unfortunately goes over the fence, and there is no way he can return. As we now take a look at Louis Chiron in the Lancia, he loses control, flips the car over, and then game physics kind of takes over, which is kind of weird. Flips the car back up on the right side, and for some reason he thinks that it is better to steer the car to the left instead of to the right where the track is, and ends up behind that wall and, well, has to retire. As on lap 26 I kind of clipped the edge of the track there. I lose control of my car, hit the fence, I stalled the engine, and that is the end of the race because, well, you cannot restart the engine on the track. And here is a replay of the that incident. I turn in a bit too early, clip the edge of the track there. That causes me to lose control of the car. It slides into the fence, and I hit the fence quite hard enough to stall my engine, and, well, that is the end of my Dutch Grand Prix. Unfortunately, I would have hoped for better, but I was hoping to finish the race at least, but it wasn't meant to be today. So that is our first retirement of the season, as we now see Robert Manzo coming around to take the win with Da Silva Ramos very close behind, just 0.2 of a second behind. And the other finishers are Jack Brabham and Jean Berra. Very lucky, managed to finish in 4th. Ken McAlpine managed to post the fastest lap of the race, but that was very close for I forgot the name now. He was 4 laps down, but fortunately enough for him, he managed to complete just about enough of the lap that he was classified as a finisher and earn 3 points in the process. And here we have all the retirements of the race, quite a few. Only 4 finishers after all, so 28 of the participants are out of the Dutch Grand Prix, unfortunately. To be honest, that's a better result than I would have expected. I really expected to see something along the lines of what we saw in the first 3 races, that is only 2 people finishing the race, but, well, 4 is better than 2, I guess. Anyway, here are the career statistics, and this was Andy's 47th Grand Prix. His best start is 1st, has 3 pole positions, has posted 9 fastest laps, his best finishes in 1st, has completed 30 races, 28 of them in the points, has won 17 of them, 3 at the Indianapolis 500, 1 at the Monaco Grand Prix, has 3 championships under his belt, has scored a total of 188 points, has retired 17 times, has experienced 1024 out of 1319 laps, has 5 bronze trophies, 3 silver trophies, 17 gold trophies, and as an extension 17 podiums. And now a very quick look at the championship standings. Andy is leading the championship at the moment, and considering that there are only 2 more races left in the season. Despite the fact that we will start dropping points starting with the next race, I don't think there is anyone who can challenge Higgs' lead now. Leslie Marr or Robert Manzon are the only ones who could potentially pose a threat, but I don't think there are enough points. In fact, there are 18 more points. That would make 26 points in total, so no one can win, which makes Andy Higgs the 1955 world champion. So yeah, that's kind of, well, I should be happy, but I'm kind of, you know, I didn't have too much challenge this season, so take that as you will. But anyway, that is it from the Dutch Grand Prix. Interesting race. Didn't expect to see so many people finishing, but I was pleasantly surprised. Our next race is the British Grand Prix at a new location this time around. A little known circuit, a fun circuit nonetheless. Too bad it is no longer in use at all. But yeah, that is it for the video. Don't forget to vote for next season's team. Link is in the description. I also have a second channel where I will be playing all sorts of different games. Right now I'm doing a playthrough of Need for Speed Underground, the original one. If you're interested in that, you can check that out as well. There is a link in the description that will take you to my second channel as well. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, stay sharp!